Hey, Mandy.
Hello, Lisa. We're here.
We are here, and I am so excited to see you and to talk with you today. This is going to be amazing.
I know. I'm pumped. I haven't really eaten that much.
You haven't?
I'll eat a lot when we're done.
When you're done. I had a spinach smoothie.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
Oh,
so
what's that look
healthy.
on your face about?
No,
Oh,
that's just very healthy.
well, that's
I'm
good.
jealous.
And you put a smidgen of frozen avocado in and just a scoop of blueberries, and that's
Oh,
amazing to keep me going for a few hours. So yeah,
wow.
so I've got my fuel, I've got my
Okay,
partner, we've got ideas, and we're ready to go.
we're
So who
ready.
are you, Mandy? Tell or guess
So
who you are.
I am excited to welcome everyone to Living Beyond Your Limits. I'm Mandy Moody, and I am labeled the recovering perfectionist. I am not the psychologist. So I keep telling everybody that that I convinced you to do this so I can get free therapy.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? So on my end, for me, it's I could get this tech savvy younger leader who will pull me out of, from under my rocks. Because I
Yeah.
think my kids
Yeah.
think I live under a rock sometime. So I love the partnership. So it's a win-win for both of us.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So, I told you I was going to share with you something I read this morning. So I get a poem every day in
Yes.
my inbox, and it's one of my things I do to kind of reset. I'll save it and read it. But the one today is the universe telling us this was a good idea.
Oh,
So I'm gonna read it, and it's so, oh my gosh, it's perfect, and it's exactly what we're gonna be doing. So okay, take a minute, and I'm gonna read it out loud. It's called Wind Watching by Kalisa Ray. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
What if Dorothy wasn't afraid of the wind? What if she welcomed the cyclone? The thought of being lifted, suspended in air as release? What if she saw it as escape, being tossed and jolted? Maybe a change would occur if she shook fast enough. Maybe she liked not knowing if her body would survive the catch and release.
Wow.
Maybe being picked up and let go in another's chaos was freeing. I imagine she was raptured before the light of the day had kissed the earth. The swirl approached and she went willingly, threw her head and arms back and let it consume her. Maybe she had been waiting to be swept off her feet by a wild, uncontrollable thing.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what we're going to talk about, right?
Oh my, we're going to talk about life because that's what life is.
Yeah.
Look at the wind that has swept us up in the last almost year and a half.
Yep.
Wow. Well, let me tell our folks who I am. So
Okay,
I'm
go.
Lisa Walker. Some call me Dr. Lisa Walker. I'm a leadership psychologist, and I help people push beyond their limits, live beyond their limits, accomplish their goals, accomplish their dreams. And literally, this has brought Mandy and I together.
Yeah.
This kind of work, this kind of conversation that's brought Mandy and I together. And I am so excited about the opportunity that we have to share with others about our journey and the journey of the people that we lead.
And it's funny because we really don't know each other that well.
That's right. So this is a discovery for us. Mandy is going to be learning about me, my serious side and my not so serious side and my crazy side. And I'm excited to learn about your multiple sides.
Yeah, there's a lot. There are many sides.
Where do we want to start?
So we both read an article recently. I hate the word pivot now because
Mhm.
everyone said it a million times
We're
last
all
year. Oh, we
pivoting.
got to pivot. It's time to pivot. And so I just got to where I hated it. But it was talking about hybrid being, our new pivot. So now we're in this limbo now, right? Like we feel like it's
Yeah,
over, but it's not over.
yeah,
And the burnout is real.
yeah.
Things are still crazy, even
Mhm.
if we're being told it's not. Like, here, get back to normal. Well, there's
Mhm.
no more normal, right?
Well,
And
there'll be a new normal that we'll have to figure out and keep figuring out,
yeah,
right? Just as we think we have come to a new normal, we're going to have to figure that out, right? Because change is going to be our only constant.
Yeah. So, I had a meeting last week and I really left frustrated because everyone was talking about burnout, right? And I have a team of 8 who I manage, but then I'm also part of a larger group of managers where I work, and everyone was talking about how burnout we were. Oh, we're exhausted. We're never going to get back on track. And oh, it's just real, we're real. And I asked, I said, so what do we do about it? And
No, but
nobody
yeah,
had an answer. It was half of the group wanted to just keep lamenting, just keep, please, let's just keep talking about it. Let's just keep saying how overwhelmed we were. Some people I could tell were doing it in an effort to almost prove their value.
yeah.
Oh, I stayed up until whatever. Oh, and I understand that's part of it too, but nobody had an answer,
Mhm.
except I don't know, but I don't see an end in sight.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you're having those discussions,
Holy
you know?
cannoli. Well, you know my work. So I sit here in my office every day and I work with leaders and teams across the globe. So in any given day, I'm starting perhaps early in Asia with a team scattered across, China, Singapore, Taiwan, whatever, and with their counterparts here in North America or in Europe. And regardless of what continent we're on or what country we're in, the situation is the same. Leaders and teams are burnt out. Now, last year, when the pandemic and the social unrest and everything hit us, we do what's natural, what's normal for all of us. We hunker down, we put our shoulders to the wheel, and we say, we'll figure this out, we'll get stuff done. And interestingly enough, most teams and organizations saw their people produce beyond what they even thought they would. So productivity went through the roof. But
Yeah.
guess what? We're all realizing now that that productivity that we were so happy about, that early this year, so many organizations are like, we are doing so well, it's hiding a dirty little secret. And the dirty little secret, which is now becoming less of a secret, is that their people are fried.
Yeah.
People like your team that you're talking to last week, they are fried emotionally, physically, socially, spiritually. And so what's happening now, people are trying to figure out, is this place even for me? Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's coming down the pike is a lot of organizations are going to see their people looking to greener pastures, right? So that's for one. The burnout is a real thing. We see the productivity masking the fear of what's going to happen with my job, what's going on with my organization, what's going on with my family.
Yeah.
Moms, dads are at home holding down their jobs, teaching their kids at the same time in some form. It might be hybrid where some of the kids might be in school,
Yeah.
some are home, but they're doing that. And at the same time, they're having to worry about maybe older family members who might live in another state, for example, or parents or grandparents in a nursing home. And all of this that's going on, folks feel like they're on this hamster wheel.
Yeah.
I bet you're
And
hitting that.
we saw in that article, it's an HBR article, and it said that executives are flat out clueless.
Oh gosh.
So, I mean,
they're my people. And so I hate
I
putting
know.
on, but that's the truth. That's the reality. And no matter how high they are in the organization. So some of my leaders are CEOs of large global companies. And so I coach from that level all the way to emerging leaders. And regardless of where they are, they're saying, Lisa, I don't even know where to start. But you know what? That's real. We've never faced anything like that.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I have tremendous respect for leaders and individuals who will say to me, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. That's a great place to start rather than pretending that we do.
How amazing is it to hear a leader or somebody say, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's hard.
I don't know. I had a beautiful conversation 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I had shared this with you, but as a CEO of a company, and I don't want to give away too much info, and he said to me, he has colleagues who signed the letter with the New York Times about companies standing up against some of the social stuff that's going on. And he felt that he needed to do more than that, but he wasn't sure what it was. So for that session or coaching session, we kind of dug deep as to looking at the values of the organization. What do they want to accomplish? And through our conversation, he realized that he was focusing so much on what was going on externally that he hadn't given enough attention to what he needed to do internally with his people. What are some of the shoulds and should nots that he and his people should be focusing on? And that was a huge aha moment for him to say, we've got to put some culture codes in place to make our people feel safe.
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing that's missing right now.
So what do you do when you have an executive who, like, how do you get them to the I don't know place?
That's such a great question. I think I hold the relationship that I have with my leaders and the teams as sacred. And I don't say that frivolously. That's a sacred relationship and a sacred space. And so I have a responsibility to make them feel comfortable to share, not just at the superficial level, but share from the heart. And so when we have our conversations, they're not just about projects and initiatives and organization, whatever. It's about the person. And so when we talk about this particular leader, for example, that I just mentioned, it's about his heart, his values. It's about the legacy that he wants to leave as an individual, not just as a leader. And so it came down to the kind of empathic person he is and how he wants to serve. So my job is to create this space for him to really share from the heart. What scares him most about what's going on? What does he really want to do? And where can he really start? Rather than say, we've got to do this big thing, where can we really start? And for you and I, and for our listeners who are individuals, that's what we've got to figure out. Yeah. What's the overall situation and what can we do today, right? Because the truth is, we are all caught up on this hamster wheel in one shape or form or another, right? And when I say the hamster wheel, what do you think I'm talking about?
I mean, for me, I mean, a lot of it is those intrusive thoughts. Of when is this going to end? Yes. Or I think I told you one of the things I've been doing where, I'll calm down when XYZ. Yes. I'll be able to chill out when I get the vaccine. I have the vaccine. I'm still not chill.
Still not chill?
Yeah. I mean, it did do something, but it's, and why we wanted to do this is there's always going to be something.
The hamster wheel is real. And so when I talk about the hamster wheel, yes, I'm talking about the way we think about stuff, right? And I'm also talking about the physical stuff that we're going through. Picture this little hamster on a wheel. It's going, all the things we have to do. The family stuff, the wife stuff, the husband stuff, the parent stuff, the granny stuff, the school stuff, the community stuff, the work stuff, all of that, and we're on this hamster wheel going. Well, here's the reality. The hamster wheel isn't going to stop, but we get to manage the hamster wheel. So I invite my leaders to think about what is it that we can do to slow that hamster wheel down? How can we slow it down so that we can take meaningful breaths, so that we can do the important things that we need to do every day, so that we're not just surviving in the middle of this crisis. We can actually thrive.
Yeah.
And so, the truth is, Mandy, we're all, I believe, this is my perspective, and others may see that differently, but I believe that to a certain extent, we're all on this hamster wheel and we're all trying to figure out how to manage, how to navigate, to slow down. I think about the Gen Z generation. I think about my daughter, Chrissy, who is, will be 24 this year, and my niece, Jessica, who's in college. And their life's been changed dramatically because of the pandemic and everything we've been through. I mean, when I talk to Jess, and she's this brilliant, savvy young woman who knows what she wants out of life and out of her schoolwork. And yet there's so many barriers right now because of the limitations brought on by the pandemic. Where do I get my internship, for example, is a big question for her. Will I actually be physically back on campus to complete my degree? She worked so hard to get into the top university in Canada, and she's going to university in her bedroom.
Yeah.
How does that impact, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you know Gen Z folks who are going, and when we say Gen Z, we're talking to folks who are up to about 24 years old right now,
Yeah.
right? So they've either just entered the workforce or they're thinking about entering the workforce. And this has changed things so dramatically for them.
I feel like it's affecting everyone in different ways, and everyone's hamster wheel is different, right? I I have to remind myself that as critical and as demanding as I was of my executives to to come to my aid, during the crisis, like lead me, lead me, lead me, like they're burnout too.
Oh, they're burned out too.
So I mean, so we're
Yes,
all there.
yes,
And they had the weight of maybe an
yeah,
organization or layoffs or,
yeah.
everything. So it all shows up in different ways. I know. And I could see there were times this past year where I could just see the look on people's face. And I'm sure you did too on Zoom or on Teams or
Yes,
whatever. We
yes,
would instantly get on a meeting and I'd be like, ooh, they're having a day, they're
yes,
having one of those
absolutely.
days where it's too much.
Yeah. And see, and your level of emotional intelligence, dare I say, is higher than most. And so you notice that. So you're picking up
Yeah.
cues in the environment that says if somebody's probably, they don't have their camera on, maybe, or they have their camera on, but the body language is telling you
Yeah.
something. They're looking away, they're distracted, or a team member who would normally engage isn't engaging in the same way. The same goes for, family. A lot of families are having conversation on Zoom these days. My family, we started last March, gathering on a Saturday evening via Zoom. And there are days when you can tell how a family member is doing by just noticing, the energy or excitement that's coming from them. It
Yeah.
tells a lot. And so these things that we're picking up, they're sort of reminding us of the explosion of mental health challenges that we're all facing. I mean, we're on a spectrum with this from the mildly depressed and anxious
Yeah.
to folks who struggle with depression and anxiety, who, if they're not careful, they'll have full blown psychosis. And
Hmm.
so, what we hear a lot right now is the word well being, almost like a
Hmm.
buzzword. Everybody's about well being, right? Well being at work, well being at home, well being. My hope is that well being will stay with us permanently, not a
Yeah.
buzzword, but that's something that we're all thinking about and talking about and putting things in place to work on. And I am so excited that you and I have taken on this mantle to have these conversations because at the heart of it is you and I are committed to supporting others in building their well-being so that they
Yeah.
can navigate whatever comes at them, so that you and I can navigate whatever comes at us.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a quick story because I'll tell you my biggest fear
Mm-hmm.
right now, it
Ooh,
with
fingernails.
myself and with my
Sorry,
family.
important notice. Did you get fingernails done?
I did.
I see
They're
that.
red, for
Very
our
nice.
listeners, they are bright red because my daughter's team, her
Uh-huh.
softball team are the Hot Shots, and they are red, and I
Oh,
have become a full-blown softball mom.
good for you. Awesome. I noticed it and I'm going to show you mine. So
Oh,
mine
they're
look
yeah, French tips. Yeah.
French tips, and what you can't see is the gardening stuff because it's springtime. So I'm
Oh,
in
I
my
cannot see your
good.
your
Good.
gardening.
Well, I just gave myself away, but good for you. I love and continue, but that was an important point.
Um, so this is my biggest fear, right, of what could happen and what is happening. So I
Mhm.
listened to The Daily, and they did a four-part series following a high school in Odessa, Texas. And
Mhm.
they followed the nurses, the students, and the teachers through the pandemic, going back to school last semester. So
Oh.
I mean, it's incredible. If you want to get an up close look of what it looked like for teachers and students and nurses to go
Ooh.
back to school, I mean, it will wake you up. So they followed this one girl who was in the band, and she, they kind of followed her the whole semester. She's a senior, And she loved the band, loved school, but of course, everything changed.
Everything.
So she had to go to work because her
Mhm.
dad lost his job because of the pandemic. So she was doing her classwork on her earbuds while working. She was going to class.
Mhm.
And end of the semester rolls around, and it's been a roller coaster of back to school, quarantine, back to school, quarantine. And I mean, at the end, she basically had resorted to, and in her interview, saying, you know what? I've just learned that I don't want to be around anybody else.
Oh, wow.
I want to stay in my room.
Mm.
I want to
Yeah.
be by myself all the
Yeah.
time. I want to do art. I want to read. And being around people just isn't for me. I'm
Yeah.
happier when I'm alone. And so they interviewed the counselor, who was talking about a bunch of different students, and she said that's what's been happening is
Mm.
they these kids are forgetting because, and how I saw it as kind of a defense mechanism, right? Like if I stay here, I won't get hurt.
Mm.
If I stay
Yes.
here, it won't be hard. And
Yes.
that's my biggest fear personally, is not leaving that room and venturing out just
Yeah.
because it's hard and uncomfortable and scary.
Yes. Yes.
And I see some of my team members, I see family members just not leaving that room.
Yes. Yeah.
Either they're in that mental room or the physical space. And that's what I that's what I want you to solve today.
I love it. I love it. That's what you want to say. And as I listen to you talk about it, one of the thoughts that came to my mind is you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That pyramid that at the top of it is, where we get to self-actualization, where we've fulfilled everything in life. But this is a journey. But at the bottom of the pyramid, the first couple of layers is those basic things that we need to survive. So we need food and water and shelter. Remember when the pandemic hit and we were all running out to get toilet paper and flour and bread and all that stuff, the basic needs. And then immediately folks says, oh my goodness, but I won't be able to see my people at work and my family. So the social part came in because we are wired and designed for social connection. We have study after study after study after study that shows when we don't have the social connections that we need, or we don't have healthy relationships, the impact on our well-being or overall well-being. And we have studies that show that when we have rich social support and networks, how we blossom as individuals and as communities. And so right now, what we're going through to a great degree is this deficit of relational connections. And so there are a lot of folks, and you'll hear folks say, I love the convenience of working from home, but I miss my people. I have a few of my leaders and team members who have gone back to work, at least partially, and they share stories with me like, Lisa, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that I would feel, or I wasn't expecting to feel this way. But when I saw my coworker, my colleague, the joy I felt, and even though we had decided that no hug, whatever, all I wanted to do was to hug. I know my Aunt Bina, who lives in Germany, was meeting one of her younger cousins for the first time, who was in Germany for a while during the pandemic. And they were meeting during the Christmas time. And they were following all the guidelines. They didn't plan to be physical. And Aunt Bina said, when I saw my little cousin, she's not little, grown, tall, beautiful woman, we hugged and I could hardly let her go because Aunt Bina lives alone. And even though we connect by phone and by Zoom, what she needed more than anything, and even today, what she needs more than anything, is connecting with others. So I hear her talk about this desperate need to be with her grandkids and to be the rest of the family. Well, we're all feeling that to a certain extent. We're wired for social connection. And so what the pandemic, to a certain extent, has taken some of that away from us. And we're desperate to trying to figure out how to make it happen. Now, there's another side of us that says, we can push through anything that comes our way. So if we need to be isolated, I'm going to be fine. And that's actually a good attitude, but taken too far, it may
Yeah.
cause us to think that we don't need these social connections. I don't have to put up with getting in my car to drive to work, or I don't have to put up with all the, whatever comes with being at work physically. So you know what? I'll make do. My concern is later on, whether it's later this year or next year, we're going to see at even a greater level the impact. Well, I shouldn't even say that. We're seeing that right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing an explosion of mental health issues.
Yeah.
How many times do you sit to watch television in the evening and you see the commercials for different apps and programs, easy access to clinician, to therapists? Therapists have never seen such a boom like this.
Yeah.
Now, that's a great thing for business, but when you think about what we're all going through in general, it is huge.
Yeah.
The fear, the anxiety, the everything, plus the isolation is magnifying our mental health issues.
Everything that's going on, what do we do about it? What do we do?
So what have you been doing? I know you've been doing some stuff to take care of yourself and your family and the folks you work with. What are you doing?
I would love to say that I'm doing it all right, but if I'm being honest, I'm probably reacting too late, because I know what I should do, but I do let myself get past that point. So I do remember a session you led really at the beginning of the pandemic, last June, where you asked a group of people coming to this conference, where do you get your best ideas?
Yes.
And I loved that question because it elicited so many different places where people had their aha moments and they were content and they were calm. And some of these places were on a run, while exercising, during yoga, during meditation, during a shower, even during sleep. We've talked about where we wake up and we have these wonderful ideas. And so I know that those are some of my places. So for me, it's a bath. It's, my husband always knows when I'm really stressed out because I take a ton of baths. So he knows something's going on if I'm like going to the bath again.
Yeah.
So
what are your favorite things that you're using in your bath?
So I typically do oil or candles, maybe wine, but that's my safe space. That's me by myself, really using heat and sweat to feel like I'm ridding myself of stress.
Yes.
And so, but I'll admit, I have gotten to the point where I've probably passed the point where I know I need to do something. I know I need to reset. And I'm sure there are warning signs that I need to reset, but I usually push beyond those before I do.
Don't we all do? Don't we all do?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What else are you doing? So the baths are fabulous with your oils and everything. What else are you doing to take yourself to that place where you get that calm and clarity? Anything else?
I mean, exercise.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, in that conversation that you reference, I shared 4 things with the audience, and I do this on a regular basis with my clients, and in fact, with myself as often as I can, to remind myself of what it is that I need to be doing. Because like you, I tend to go too far, and then I've got to pull myself back and say, wait a minute, Lisa, what's going on? So I say, let's do regular inventory of 4 specific areas in our lives. And we can start anywhere, but let's start with physical. Take an assessment of how we're taking care of ourselves physically. And that includes things like our diet. What is that like? Remember last year, 2020, during the pandemic, most of us were baking, right? Flour was in shortage in a lot of places because we're eating a lot of carbs to be comfortable. And now a lot of us are reassessing that and perhaps pulling back. So physically, how's my diet, my exercise, all that stuff. And then there's an emotional side, doing an emotional inventory. What's my pervading or dominant emotions that I've been experiencing? And what do I need to do to shift that? So if the pervading emotion is something like anxiety, fear, or worry, we know that that means that your body is producing a tremendous amount of cortisol, the stress hormone, which has huge negative impacts on our bodies and how we function. So the need to shift that to producing more feel good hormones, for example, like endorphins, that becomes critical. So that takes us to the third area that we need to assess, which is relational. When we are connected with others and we're nourishing those relationships, especially when we're in close contact, it could even be virtual, like you and I are experiencing right now, but we're engaged. And what's happening is that our bodies get a chance to produce the feel good hormone endorphins because we're connecting in special ways. So all these Zoom conversations that families are getting in, that's one of our best remedies right now to help. So the assessment on the relational side, how often am I reaching out to friends and family, to coworkers, to talk about something other than work, other than the news, other than what's worrying us? Sometimes we have to unload about what's worrying us, as but talking about stuff that's going to feed the soul as well. So third is relational. And then there's a spiritual side of it. And when I say spiritual, I'm not necessarily referring to religion. I'm referring to what feeds your soul. Where's that place you go to that feeds your soul? I noticed your eyebrows went up when I said spiritual and what feeds your soul. What does that hit for you?
I guess I assumed it meant religion
Yeah.
or
Well, a
your
lot of people do.
relationship with a higher power, or I hadn't framed it in that
Right.
context before.
So when I get to this place where I'm focused on feeding my soul, for me, it actually is connecting with the creator, right? And different people, different walks of life see that differently. For some, it's under structured religion. For others, and because we're talking to people across the spectrum, having it be focused on the spiritual side, we're giving each of us the freedom to determine where we get our spiritual nourishment from. You know, my husband and I love to hike. And so early on weekend mornings, you can find us at the crack of dawn hitting the trails. For me, that's a spiritual experience. The
Mm-hmm.
sound of the birds in the morning. It's springtime right now, and it's beautiful. Everything is nice and green. You're smelling the outdoors and you're hearing the birds. That takes me to a place of calm like nothing else can do. Well, that's not true. My garden. Running up between meetings to go check on my baby persimmons or my tomato blossoms or whatever. That feeds my soul. So do that inventory, the four areas, right? The physical, the emotional, the relational, the spiritual, and check where we are. We're never going to be fully balanced in any of these areas, right? There's always something we're working on. For me, one of the areas I'm working on right now, working really hard, it's my sleep.
Yeah.
You know, in the past, I tended to say things like, I'm a night owl, so I'm up at nights. And I realized that I was owning this thing that said, well, you know, I'm staying up late at nights, and maybe that's okay because I'm a night owl. I've had to let go of that and say my sleep is really important. So I've got to clean up my sleep hygiene. That might mean locking down electronics, television, all that before. It might mean my nice warm cup of tea to get me ready for bed, that sort of thing. So cleaning that up so that I can work on that area. So what do you think you're working on most?
I think I'm working on right now a hard divide and line between work and family,
Hmm. What would that
because
look like?
I think it means really shutting off the computer when it's time to shut down.
Yes,
I think it means, but it's not just that. You know, people say, "Oh, close your computer and leave the room." It is not just
not
that,
just that.
because my brain has nothing to do with a computer and the thoughts that go on in it. And that's what I'm really trying to do, is
Mhm.
really focus my attention and
Mhm.
shift my thoughts and everything that goes with it to the present and where I am.
Yeah.
Because it's not about email for me. It's not about,
Mhm.
physically typing on a computer or checking Teams. It's where where's my brain and where's my energy going right now when it's 7:00 and I should be with my children and my brain is thinking about something I need to do the next day.
Yeah. So when that happens, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage that?
I don't know.
You gotta have a strategy.
Yeah. And, I love that you talked about taking an inventory of all those things, because for people who are listening who are super data driven, that might be really helpful to do those percentages out, because I can see some definite holes. But I think, as my therapist says, neurons that fire together wire together. So I've got to do some rewiring and refiring. And so I think I've just got to force myself to deep breaths, some mindfulness really helps me.
Yeah. And a little trick I learned some time ago is, we have automatic negative thoughts that come at us all the time, right? They're automatic, they just come. And they bother us because they get in the way. They're negative to begin with, so they get in the way of the things we want to do. So your plan is to disengage from the computer, from electronics, and be focused fully on the family. Yet, while you're physically away from the computer, you might still be having those thoughts. Don't fight them. The thoughts about work, they're going to come up. Don't fight them. Notice them, and then intentionally dismiss them. Literally, almost like you're physically grabbing them in your brain, and you're intentionally throwing them aside. And as you do that, immediately replace them with thoughts that are aligned with what it is that you really want, the outcome that you want. So the outcome you want is to be more present and clear-minded for your family. So you immediately replace those thoughts that went to work with thoughts about family and the decision that you have made to focus more on family and be present for the family at that time. You mentioned neurons that fire together or wire together. Well, you're wiring and rewiring neurons in your brain as you do this. And so over time, being consistent with this, you will realize that you've developed a practice that allows you to disengage from the computer and from work and be more present with your family. But it's a practice.
I was about to say, now you're giving me work.
Yes, I know, but it's work that's going to be better for you, right?
Yeah. So we've got to wrap up. And I know we said we wanted to end these with a call to action.
Yes.
You just gave me some homework. So what do we want to encourage listeners to do? What's their homework?
Yeah. Well, I want to invite our listeners to think of at least one thing that they're going to be focused on to do differently, to help them in one of these 4 spheres of their life so that they can slow the hamster wheel down a bit, right? Can quiet the amygdala down, can create some calm and peace and disengage from all the craziness that's around us, and actually open the prefrontal cortex. So the things we need to and want to think about more deeply, that we're able to do that. So that one thing, what is that for you? And we'd love to hear from you what it is that you're working on.
Yes, definitely. Lisa, this has been awesome.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. I can't wait for our next time.
Yep, next time. So thank you all for listening. You will be hearing from us again in a couple of weeks. You can find us on Apple iTunes, on Spotify, and on Google Play, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll also be on YouTube. And until we meet again, goodbye.
Bye-bye for now. See you guys next time.